Now, going down towards the mat and defending against my opponent's low single on me. Typically, if my opponent attacks a low single, I want to consider whether my foot, and this is relative to his spine now, is facing in that half of his body, or on this side of his spine, or that side of his body. You'll notice my knee changes or turns in each situation. Turn around here, Colby. One situation is with my foot and my knee facing slightly in this direction. The other situation, scoot around here, is my foot and knee facing in this direction. I want to be aware of, on impact, when he strikes me here and he attacks, where my foot is, because that's going to dictate which type of technique I do in this position. Colby shoots in a low single on me. At this point, sprawling is not the thing to do. I can't sprawl because I have to push my hips down low. Well, he's already far lower than my hips. Also, I've got to get my legs back, and if he's got my leg that low, there's no way I have the power and the ability mechanically to drag my foot back. But going along with the principle that I always want to attack the head, and most principally push his head down, I'm going to proceed in that direction. So as soon as he attacks me here, I'm certainly not going to try to pull my leg away. I don't want to do that. I just want to keep the weight on his head. How can I do that? If my knee is facing in this direction, I'm just going to come down on his head. Now, if I do this and he pushes around, I'm probably going to slide off and he's going to finish, and I'll lose the takedown there. However, if as he attacks, I push his head down and come down on his head, notice he's going to hang on to my leg in all likelihood because he's trying to take me down. I'm going to grab a piece of him here as deep as I can. Notice this head, or this knee, is on his head, and I'm going to put this knee towards the mat. I'm going to do almost like a hamstring curl here. Notice where my leg is. Now, it may feel awkward in this position. Scoot around a little bit. This feels awkward because you feel like, oh, he could pull you this way, but he's got very little power in this position. So I just keep lifting up so he can't turn this way. From here, I pull his hip over, and now I'm going to finish. At first, it looks and feels precarious having your foot out that way. Your opponent cannot crank on that effectively as long as I'm lifting it up here and I'm tugging his hip in this direction. You don't have to worry about them torquing or cranking on your knee. That's not going to happen. In fact, Colby will tell you here probably that I have a lot more pressure on his shoulder, okay, than he would on my knee as he holds on, actually in desperation in that position, to my leg. Colby attacks in on a low single. He gets past all my defenses. I push his head down. I'm on his head. Now I want you to notice this should be roughly parallel to the ground. If I'm leaning on this foot and also putting weight on his head, some of my weight is on this foot. I don't want that. I want all of my weight to be on his head. So right now, my knee is off the mat, my foot is off the mat. My leg is pretty parallel here. There ain't no way he's going to lift up from this position. Immediately I grab, notice my knee comes down. Now, I tug at the hip. I can break this grip now by coming behind his head to this position here. And that gives me leverage to break that grip. Colby attacks in. I push his head down, come on top, grab, come through here, pull the hip over. Now, he can keep cranking on that. All I got to do is block here. He can't pull his arm past this arm here. He can't pull his arm past my arm. So my knee is okay in this position. All I want to do is come down. I'm going to crank on his arm this way and push his head this way. He's going to let go. I have much more leverage and mechanical advantage than he does in this position. The second possibility, and both of these situations that I'm talking about, the first one where my knee and leg and foot are pointed in one direction, and the second one where, and I'm exaggerating it simply to make the point here, where my knee and foot are pointed in the opposite direction or towards the other side of Colby's body, are from positions where he is in front of me. We'll be going over what happens when he gets around and behind me in a moment. But if we're moving around and Colby catches me here and my knee is facing this way, if he's got my ankle or he's got my leg tight, that's very difficult for me to be able to turn all the way over to do what I just did a moment ago. Now, if I get a little loose, maybe I can do that. Maybe. Okay? But frequently, if he has me really tight here, that's very difficult for me to be able to turn my foot, which is planted on the mat because he's grabbed it and he's got good secure hold on it. That's difficult, if not impossible. So I can't go this way. So I'm going to go the opposite way. The principle is the same. Always keep your weight on your opponent's head. To do that, now I'm going to do a different type of movement and technique, but the principle and the goal is the same. I'm going to come low and to his body close. I'm going to reach under from this position here. You'll notice I'm on top of Colby's head, and I want to be as close as I can to his body here. Colby is low. Notice this foot is facing slightly outside this way as opposed to this way. Very difficult, especially if he has it secured well on the mat, for me to turn. You know, maybe if I can weasel around and get a little space, maybe. But in most likelihood, not. And I'm going to be wasting a lot of time trying to get that motion to be able to turn. So instead, I'm just going to come here. Now I want you to notice something here. My foot does not want to be on the ground. It wants to be up. Just like before, my leg is parallel to the mat. It's on his head, and in fact, it's kind of on the back of his head, sort of towards the lower end of his occiput, right up on the top part of his neck, right in that little bend and hollow, just like it was in the last technique that we did. Notice if I get too far in front, there's a tendency for me to want to slide off here. If I get too far in front, I'll tend to slide off. So I keep it pretty much jammed up as high as I can here. Notice it's almost like I'm doing a quadricep exercise here on a leg machine. I want to keep this up. I want to keep this up hard. I don't want him to pull this down, because if he gets this down on the mat, there's weight on the mat and less on his head, and he's probably going to be able to get out. So I've got to come in tight here. The other thing is there is a hole here, and I've got to make sure he cannot back out this way, of course, then to come on top of me. I do that by crowding him in this position here. I'm going to crowd him tight on his body here. So I want to keep very little distance here. I want to be very tight. One option here is to reach under his crotch. Another option is to reach through here, although I've got to be cautious reaching through here that I don't get rolled. Okay? And I can do that by just kind of keeping my elbows chintzy here. I go deep, I'll get rolled. If I'm grabbing here, I'm okay. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight over his head. His head is down. I'm going to put a lot of friction on his head, a lot of weight. I'm going to just drive him over here. Notice I'm going to trap his arms, and then I'm going to adjust. Most of the defensive stuff that I discuss and that I do involves always pushing the guy's head down in one manner or fashion. And this is no different. It's just the position is a little bit different. The goal is the same. Keep the guy's head down by keeping your weight on it. Colby attacks in. My foot is in the position where it's unfavorable for me to turn in, so I'm going to come here right away, and then I'm just going to drive over. I'm going to pinch and post, and I'm going to transition. Notice too, when I do these, although I'm talking about it, I'm kind of going through slow. If I'm actually doing the technique, somebody shoots in on me, boom, you come down on top of their head, you secure your grip, and you finish. Pretty much with all of the techniques, either whether it's attacking or attacks or defense. Colby attacks in. From here, immediately, I come to this position. I want to keep in tight here. If I can't come inside, I'll grab through the crotch. And I'm pushing off my foot here. There's tremendous weight on his head. If he tries to lift my leg up, If he tries to lift my leg up, I'm not just going to push my weight down. I'm going to push his body forward. That makes it very difficult for him to lift up. If he tries to lift up here, I'm pushing his weight down, or pushing his head down with my leg, but not only that, I'm going to lift up his butt, and I'm going to push him forward. That makes it more difficult for him to lift up.